Let's get rolling. Okay, perfect. So the timeline, and this you're gonna see it also in the first webinar. This is the timeline of all of the changes that happened to FBA fees in 2024. These are all of the changes that happened in 2024 for the fees. And we are already in March. March hit us really hard with the inbound placements. And, you can share your experience in the chat. We're going to talk about that in here. Also, one thing, since this is a workshop and we want to make it as interactive as possible for you, we're going to give you tools. There will be a few QR codes that you're going to scan so you get the tools and everything. Make sure to pay attention, but if you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat. And if it is relevant to what we talk about, we can put it inside of the presentation. We don't need to wait to the end. But if you wait to the end, you're going to have the best tool, or the newest one, for the low inventory fee that is hitting on April 1st. So what's happening next month? Low inventory level fees, that's something that is kind of like unknown to us. It's a completely new fee. The storage utilization will change, and in April 15, the fulfillment fees will decrease. So that decrease that they roll out the beginning of the year, that will happen. Also, they will have an automated removal of inventory that is aged after 365 days. And the return processing fees, that's when your returns are higher than the threshold from the category. So that will happen in June. Stay tuned for those things. Pay attention to those dates, are important. So let's play the FBA game. And when Chelsea and I were talking about, like, okay, what are we going to talk about and how we're going to make sense of all of these changes, we thought, because we're not football fans, we think, like, what's the most complex and difficult game that I ever seen? And we said, like, okay, American football. American football has so many different moving parts at the same time, so many plays, so many points, so many ways to win points. That's exactly the game we are playing with FBA. But we make sense of it, and we know that there are three main plays. We plan, we optimize, and we forecast. And when we do all of these things, we win points in our profitability, meaning our bottom line. Our margins will get better if we plan properly, if we optimize, and we forecast. And for those three plays, we have specific ones inside of them. So for the plan, we plan for inbound placement. For optimize, we do optimization on the FBA fulfillment and the monthly storage. And to forecast, we do H inventory, peak storage, and low inventory fee. So this is the agenda of this workshop today. We're gonna go over in all of this in that specific order, because we first need to plan, then optimize, then forecast. So let's talk about planning. The inbound placement fee. Oh my God, that's the amount of noise and things that have happened in the industry because the inbound placement, it's crazy. And I think, and we share that in the webinar, in the first webinar, is that the reason why this is coming, and you need to understand that part, is Amazon, it's a business and they need to be profitable. So for a long time, and we're talking about years, decades, FBA was not a profitable business. Okay, so Amazon decided in 2023 we're gonna make it profitable, and we're not gonna subsidize sellers and the internal distribution. So they say, let's go with inbound placement. The FTC is looking into this fee because the only way out to this fee, and we're gonna see it later, is through other programs that Amazon have that make it more, harder to leave the ecosystem. And I put here the QR code. So if you want to sign that petition, so that's a petition that somebody put in the internet to ask Amazon, to ask Jeff Bezos to get rid of the changes. I don't know if that will go anywhere, but I thought it's cool to have it there. So if you can sign it, I think this morning was like in the 3,000s. They want to have 5,000 signs. So go and do that. So inventory placement fees. In the first webinar in February, we didn't know what inventory placements will really be, because the only thing that we had is the policy. So at that time, it's just the policy and the way that we were interpreting the policy. Now that we have a month of experience with what's happening and how they are looking into it, we know that Amazon is not paying for FC transfers anymore. So they're making you pay to go and distribute the inventory across the network. These fees are relative to your product type, the quantities in the shipping plan, the existing inventory levels in, across the network, and the location of the customer demand. So at the beginning, we were thinking like, oh no, it's just product types and sizes, but not necessarily. So the more inventory you have in the network, the more expensive it could be. The farther your inventory is from the customer, that's also a huge play. That's probably the biggest thing that will drive your fees up. And we have variables per region. So we have 3 regions. We have East, Central, and West. West is the most expensive one, and that's why if you go to the chart of the fees, you're gonna see a range from 21 cents to 30 cents. That's because of the region, depending on which one you go to. And also you have 3 shipping tiers, which converts into, in Amazon, 3 options. You have sending to a single location, and sometimes that's not even possible. So we've seen and we test many shipments, and a few of them don't even give you the option to have a single location. So the other option is going to 2 or 3, and that's like a partial shipment split, and more than 4, which is just crazy, but more than 4, they say that there is no fee. But I don't know if it was your experience, you can share it. I saw once in one account where they were sending to 4 different locations and they still got a partial, they still got a percentage of the splitment fee. So again, I also know that on Amazon internally there is a conversation about how they're gonna offset this and what are the things or tools that they can give sellers. And for that, we have a strategy. So remember, this is the play of planning. We need to plan and what are our strategies. So the first thing, if you scan this QR code, you will go to the Amazon revenue calculator. And in the calculator, right now, they added a section, if you see it here, that is the inbound cost. So depending on the amount of shipments, so you have the 3 tiers, so minimal, partial, or more than 4, and then the regions, and you will see how much that will cost you. So in the past, we didn't have a way to kind of plan the cost. There is, unfortunately, guys, if we want to play this game, there is no way around if we want to use FBA. So if you're using FBA as a supplement of your 3PL or directly from your manufacturer, that's probably something that you have to pay, unless you use the 2 other options, which is enroll for Seller Fulfill Prime. So at the beginning of this year, they open up, was it this year? Maybe Q4 last year. They open up the enrollments for Seller Fulfill Prime. That is an incredible program. I've seen several accounts that have that option of Seller Fulfill Prime. But the thing is that you need to have very high standards, and the requirements to have that badge is huge. So you need to ship on Saturdays, and you need to have like 1-day promise and all of that. So it requires a higher effort in the logistics, but if you have the options, then you could do the having the Prime badge without paying the inbound placement and all of that. And the other option, which we're going to talk about, is the AWD option. I know, and Charles is saying that he's been able to circumvent the inventory placement fee via the API creation. I know that that's an option, and I know that there are some tools out there that are offering this. I also know, because I I have contacts with people at Amazon, and they were explaining how that's rolling out internally, is that this fee will be in place, and the loopholes that you find right now will go away pretty soon. So the idea here is that we understand and plan for this to be in our cost, in our unit economics. We need to understand, because circumventing the process today is not scalable. You won't be able to do this forever, because Amazon catches the loopholes, and they will close them at some point. So for the AWD, so that's the Amazon warehousing and distribution. I have mixed feelings. My personal opinion, mixed feelings. This program will be a huge tool for your profitability. It will be a thing that will make you save thousands and thousands of dollars if you only use FBA in your business. But at the same time, the things that are not the best for the program is that you don't control the inventory as fast as you would if you will be in a private third party, 3PL, or even in your own warehouse. That's kind of the downside of the program. But you send inventory there, you use it as a 3PL, you have the option to do the replenishment automatically, which we're going to talk about that later. It will help you with the low inventory fees. But most importantly, when you are in the AWD network and you want to send to different locations or send inventory to FBA, you can do it in one shipment, and that will be way more cheaper, sending to one location, and also you're gonna avoid the inbound placement fee. So it's an option that I recommend you to look into it, especially because we see things, and if you scan this QR code, you will go to the page where you can see everything and even enroll. I'm seeing right now that in Seller Central, the flow to AWD is already there. So you could create a shipment to AWD and have it, in the same kind of dashboard. So that's pretty cool. I think they're improving that side of the business, because there is no way back. And that's one thing that it's important to understand. There is no way back to how we used to send inventory to Amazon. So as you see, the storage, monthly storage fee for AWD is pretty low compared to regular FBA, 38% lower. And during the holiday season is 80% lower, which is crazy, right? And if we, on top of that, add the possibility of circumventing the inbound placements and the low inventory, that probably at the end of the day it will make sense on your bottom line to say, like, okay, let's do AWD. I know the other option obviously is go FBM, and the only way I think that is good to go FBM is if you have the Prime badge. So if you go FBM and you don't have the Seller Fulfilled Prime, badge, it will be probably really hard to compete with your competitors that are in FBA and have that Prime badge. We already know how the algorithm works and how, things are not prioritized for people that are not Prime. So with that, I let you to talk about optimization with Chelsea.
Hey guys, so we want to talk about optimization. It's important to look at your business from the perspective of not just marketing optimization and PPC optimization, but also to look at it from the perspective of optimization of your operations. So what we want to talk about is, first and foremost, the FBA fulfillment fees. So the fulfillment fees are actually changing. There's a couple of things that are changing that are actually to our benefit, and they were meant to help offset some of these crazy fees that you are seeing at Amazon. So first and foremost, the fees have been decreased, right? They're decreasing, I believe, on the 15th. Fulfillment fees are decreasing. And so if you have products that maybe were, you're paying a certain fee, you should see a decline in that fee in the next couple of weeks. The other thing that is happening is that there are new size tiers. There's a couple of different size tiers that have been added, and therefore the fees not only are decreasing, but your product could fall into a lower size tier so that you're paying even lower fees than before. The other rule, when we talk about rules or plays, the other rule for fulfillment fees is that dimensional weight still applies. So just briefly touching on it, if you're not familiar with dimensional weight, it was introduced a couple years ago. And basically, Amazon looks at the size of your product and does a calculation. And not sure if I'm going to give the calculation yet. If you want to hear the calculation, say something in the chat and we can talk about it later. But they do a little calculation, and what they do is determine whether the size of your product is large enough to warrant billing it higher than that fee tier, right? And Jim just left the calculation, length times width times height divided by 139. Thanks, Jim. So when you look at your product, you may find that even though you think you should be in one size tier, you're actually in another size tier. First and foremost, check your dimensions and make sure that Amazon has those dimensions right. And if they don't, you can open up a case, but check your dimensions and then do that calculation, length times width times height divided by 139. And you'll see if you are in a higher tier based on that new number being your weight. So apply dimensional weight and make sure that you're in the correct size tier. Now, everybody knows that if you want to sell product, you can't avoid this fee, right? Everyone's going to pay a fulfillment fee based on the size of your product. And that actually brings us to a case study. So this is a case study that was done. This is a product that has been changed, right? The product is the same, the packaging is different. And so with resizing this product, there has been a significant change. You can see the size of the box and how much smaller it is. When you get it that thin, it moves it from the large standard into the small standard. Now the weight is still the same. We can see that the weight was 4 ounces or less, and it's still 4 ounces or less, but the size tier, the large standard, moved into small standard. The other thing I wanted to kind of point out is if you look at this lower image and you see this bow, the bow is sticking out a little bit from the box. When Amazon goes and scans that, most likely that bow is going to actually hurt your size. It could bump you up, even though the box is a certain shape. If the Amazon is scanning that, the laser or whatever they use is going to scan and add that additional size from the height and the ribbons in the bow. So that's something to keep in mind. Actually, poly bags have this same problem. So if you've got a product with a poly bag, you want to make sure that it's as tight as possible, because if it stretches out and you've got some loose bag, if it stretches out, then you could get bumped into a higher size tier. So it's really important to kind of think of these things and think of when you're doing this packaging, you think, just put a cute little bow on it. It looks like a gift, but then it has those negative results in your bottom line. So you can see the savings for that product were 62 cents per unit. Then we had a case study for this brand, right? This is just 2 of the product that we scanned. I believe we checked 4 different products, and we were able to find that with this product, we identified opportunities to move into a lower size tier based on just shaving, you might be shaving in this sense 0.04 pounds. Other instances we found is shaving, just 1/4 of an inch here or there. And that can make a huge difference in terms of the fees that you're paying. And this brand, because of the volume they were doing, saved about $90,000 per year in simply making these very minor shifts. So there's a huge opportunity for that. We will be able to send out the link for you to check this out. And then we have something at the end you're going to want to take advantage of, which will allow us to look at your entire catalog and scan the entire catalog. You could have thousands of products. We can scan the entire catalog and look at what are the opportunities that lie in your business. And if you assessed this last year, because we have, we're seeing that Amazon has the new fee structure, it's possible that even those that you didn't have an opportunity to reduce last year now have that opportunity. So it's worth taking a look at again for this year. All right,
So
and then
let me just pause a minute, just because I see the chat is just blowing up with a bunch of things about the AWD program. I see something that is very important. I think in the experience, as far as I've seen with AWD, you cannot send, like, let's say a box of only 20 units to AWD. Like, you need to send a lot more inventory. Somebody said in the chat that they are only able to send inventory via pallets. That's not my experience, but it's definitely more inventory. We're talking about hundreds of units, not only like a box of 20. I don't know if you have another experience with AWD.
Who, me?
And yeah.
No, not that I've known.
Yeah, and the other thing Kelsey was saying, and this is very important, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention that on the inbound placement, when you're sending a shipment or a box with multiple SKUs, it doesn't send it to one location. And you need to understand the math behind that. When you create a shipment, they are assessing the product size, the prototype, the levels of inventory that you have in the network, and the demand for that inventory. So let's say that in a box, you have 20 different SKUs. All of those SKUs might have different factors. So they might be different sizes, they might be at different levels of inventory within the network, and ultimately the most important one is that the demand could be all over the US. Therefore, sending that to one location, it's not possible. That's why I said at the beginning, I seen where they don't give you the option to send to one location. So the way that they're trying you to optimize your shipments is to send cases or to send boxes with the same unit inside. So this will be, I think this is bad news for a lot of people doing, let's say, retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, that have like small units, a little bit amount of units per SKU. They will see the impact really, really high. And also, that's the other thing, AWD might not be a solution for you because, again, you're sending small quantities.
Yeah, it has to be case pack because Amazon's checking in it as case pack. Like we've seen the AWD reports on inventory levels and inventory moves in and out, and it's always by cartons, right? Amazon AWD deals in cartons, they don't deal in units, and they're not unpacking your stuff for fulfillment. They're keeping your boxes like a 3PL and then shipping them in. So if you're trying to put multiple products in one box, it's not going to work for AWD.
Yeah, and the other thing to mention is that it started, so the inbound placement fee started in March 1st, and they only charge you 45 days after that's received in the warehouse. So after it's received and the shipment is closed, is that then 45 days later, so somebody said there that in April 15, they will start charging you. Probably not, unless the inventory was already, no, because you started, the inbound placement started in March 1st. That's when you see it. Then they need to be 45 days after the closing date on the warehouse.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to start seeing charges in April, May for things that we sent in March. That's why the revenue calculator is so critical. Super critical that you stay on top of that and put those numbers in your bottom line, because again, you might find loopholes right now, but those are not sustainable, especially, and trust me when I say this, this is not going to be sustainable. The loopholes will probably not be here for Q4. And because that's when Amazon spent the most amount of money, like redistributing the network. And yeah, things are expensive.
Yeah.
So the other fee, and I can talk about this one on the optimization side of things. We have, you optimize for your FBA, and as Chelsea mentioned, those are the dimensions and the tier that you fall into. But on top of that, you have the storage fee. So these two fees, FBA fulfillment and monthly storage, are things that you cannot avoid if you're using FBA. But we saw for the monthly storage that there was a decrease of 0.09 cents per cubic foot. And that, kind of offset a lot of the other things that went up. And it's even lower if you do WD. But the interesting thing is that what are the optimization strategies for these two? So the first thing, and Chelsea mentioned this, remeasure your inventory in FBA. So two things. You can remeasure the things that are inside, and a few of you share in the chat of like, oh yeah, I sent a poly bag and that's loose and it's a bigger thing. Let's say that tomorrow you're gonna change the packaging or change your poly bag or vacuum seal the packaging. Then you wanna do a remeasuring of the inventory that's in FBA, so your weights and dimensions are accurate, so they can go lower, right, of the things that you have there. And make sure to do that and review this constantly, because Amazon might change it at one point and you don't even realize. And the amazing thing is that you can, once you request a qubit scan to remeasure that, and if there is any discrepancies, you could even request for a reimbursement in those areas. Say like, hey, you charge me for this tier, but my product actually is in a lower tier. Can you please reimburse that money? So again, it's a tedious work. You need to do it, stay on top of it, or have tools like SoStock or Seller Investigators that give you that information like automatically. The other part is resizing the packaging to go under a tier. So if you scan this QR code, you will go to the resizer tool that SoStock has, where you can input your units or the information of your product one by one. Or there's actually an option, and we'll share more about that, where you could do an audit of your whole catalog completely automatic. But if you want to do it one by one, that's the tool. And that will tell you how many inches and how many inches you need to cut your packaging to go down a tier. So sometimes it's not even something dramatic. It's just half an inch. And that probably you're able to squeeze it somewhere. It doesn't need to be even in the same size, it could be in all of 3 sizes. And the last thing to optimize for this, or the strategy, is less day of supplies. So for the monthly storage, that's something that will play a huge role. We are now in the game where we cannot overstock, definitely not. It will be extremely expensive, and we cannot run out of stock out. So we need to be in that perfect middle of less than, I will say, 90 days of supply in FBA if you're using it, between, I don't know, 75 and 90. I don't know what you think, Chelsea, is the best like number that you should have.
90 is at the top end, and it really depends on a couple of things. If you have a longer lead time, usually we say at the top end, because there's more things that can go wrong the longer your lead time and the more, hands it changes. If you've got domestic stock, or you keep a good amount of stock at your 3PL, then we could say shorter, but I would say between 75 and 90 is usually a good range.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about forecasting. Those probably are the more complex plays. And a huge thing, we mentioned that in the first webinar, forecasting, it's what literally will break or make your business. So inbound placement, fulfillment fees, monthly storage, those are the rules. Those are the things that we need to do to play this game. But forecasting, though, this is where we make the points. This is where we, increase our margins, and we'll see a huge, massive difference if we optimize for it rather than just like leave it there and I don't know, I guess cruising and not paying attention to all of these plays.
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. So when we're talking about forecasting, the question is to ask yourself, you may be profitable today, but will you be profitable tomorrow? And it's not just, the changes in terms of the fees that are happening right now when you ship your product out. It's your product sits there and maybe you were planning to sell it within the next 3 months, but it doesn't do as well as you thought it was going to do. So you're kind of frustrated. You start focusing on other products, really driving revenue. And on the backside, your storage fees and the various different fees that accumulate are actually chipping away at all the profit you're building. So that's why it's really important, especially now with the fees becoming more and more expensive, to really focus on strategies to avoid those, right? To be actively managing that side of the business versus reacting, right? You want to be proactive versus reactive. So first things first, aged inventory. Aged inventory was introduced a couple of years ago, and Amazon has changed the structure along the way. This year they changed the structure, so it begins at 6 months. It used to begin at 9 months, but it begins at 6 months, and then it starts at 50 cents, and then it increases on a monthly basis. So every 30 days it's increasing. So 50 cents a cubic foot is where it starts, and this is on top of your monthly fees. It's not or, it's and, right? At 9 months, it jumps from, it goes 50 cents at 6 months, 7 months, it's $1, 8 months, it's $1.50. At 9 months, it goes to $5.45 per cubic foot. And then it increases from there. So there's a significant increase. If you're not watching for that and a product jumps into that range, that's a huge chunk of your money taken out of your pocket. The other important rule to know is that Amazon assesses for aged inventory the 15th of every month. This gives you a deadline for being able to react. If you know that whatever inventory is sitting there is going to be charged a bunch of money, then you should be planning the entire month leading up to that. So when we talk about, for the football analogy, getting ready for the Super Bowl, I mean, that's, the Super Bowl is really Q4, but getting ready for whatever, I don't know those
the playoff. I know that there's something called the playoff.
Yeah, exactly. Those things. Getting ready for that on a monthly basis to get to that D-Day of the 15th of each month. So we're going to talk about some strategies around how do you actually organize your business for that. So here's where we get tactical. First and foremost, there's a report that you're going to want to download. You go to the analytics, and then you go to your fulfillment reports. Under the inventory section, there's something called the FBA Inventory Report. This report is extremely helpful. It's got more information than nearly any report. I think it's got more information than any report on in inventory, really. You can see there's, that last column is BV. So you have an idea of how much information is in this report. You're going to want to scroll all the way to the right, and you're going to find this information. It's the aged inventory surcharge in units. You want to know in units so you have an idea as it progresses what you could be incurring in terms of fees. So you download this report, you find these columns, and the other column that you're going to need is the item volume. This is your cubic feet per unit. In order to understand what your fees that you're going to be charged are, the formula is number of units aged times the cubic foot times the fee rate. So let's see how this works by looking at the fees and how they relate. So if you look down at the bottom, this is the fees as of February 15th of this year. And you can see, like we talked about, that huge increase in fees. So we want to focus on all of these columns from the point of those 9 months to the point of over a year, right? That's the first and foremost. I would start from the oldest to the newest. Sort first that column with the over a year, and see if you have any items that are currently being charged at over a year, because they're being charged at $6.90 per cubic foot. Go through that, and then you're going to go back further and further until you get a list of all of the ASINs that are in trouble, right? So then now you've got to do the math. So we take this product, and this is an important piece. So we look at the 9 months and we say, this is an immediate problem for us. But then you also want to take a look at the items from 240 to 270, because they are just about to move into the range of $5.45. So this is the big increase that you want to avoid. So it's not just those, last 9 months. I would go 8 months back. And then as you clean things up, you can go further and further. But that's one of those, basically it's a time bomb that's about to go off. So
question
Yep.
in the chat.
Mhm.
Let's say that when you get the information, and as you calculated here, based on the amount of units you have, the cubic or the volume and the rate, they charge you this, let's say $46.73 every 15 of the month, every month going forward.
Yeah.
So this
Whatever you
stacks
have
up.
left. What's that?
So this stacks up like every single month. It's not like they charge it just one time.
Yeah, sorry, my camera. Yeah, no, that's correct. They don't charge it, or they charge it every, shoot, sorry guys. I don't know what's happening to my computer. Are you still there? Am I still there? Okay, good.
Yeah, we hear you, but we don't see you.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. Oh, here we go. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so the 15th of each month. So as you are selling through, you might have less inventory, right? So you're going to be charged with whatever you have sitting there on the 15th. But as you sell through, it's not just that you were charged $5.45 per cubic foot for the unit sitting there, is that you're also charged $1.50 before that, $1 before that, 50 cents before that, and all of the months of storage. So when you think about, am I profitable? You've paid a ton in storage to get to this point. So there's current profit, which is what you know that you are paying to Amazon and all the fees that we've talked about before. And there's your landed cost. And then there's what you paid in storage to this date. And then we say, now let's project out, and are you really profitable? So it's important to kind of consider the whole picture and then forecast for, to get an idea of what you should be doing with that inventory. Not just having it sell through, but being active about protecting your profit. And this is one of the ways to do it, is understanding these fees and taking action before they really hurt your profit.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing, sorry, somebody was asking, Emily was saying, so if I remove the inventory by the 15th, I won't get charged this.
Yeah, it locks in place. Even if Amazon takes a while to move it through the inventory, move it through the process, because sometimes it can take a couple of months to get all of that returned to you from the various different locations. But that's on Amazon. So they lock that in place. As long as sometimes Amazon will cancel a portion of your removal or your liquidation order, then you'll be charged for that. They don't always let you know why they canceled, but for the inventory that has been removed, that locks it in place. Then we're going to get into some strategy, a tactic that you can use on a monthly basis to protect against this. So let's look at, so this was the same product we said was being billed at a total of $46 for the previous month. And then it jumped up to the next month at $5.45 per cubic foot, and went from $47 to $170 for the same amount of inventory. So that's when we say the time bombs. We want to prevent that from happening. And if you look up at that column that shows that 345 units, see all of the other items that are in that column as well. So we're not just talking about one ASIN. We're talking about throughout your entire catalog, you could be sitting on some time bombs. You want to be doing this on first on an intensive basis right now to be able to stop the bleeding, and then on a monthly basis. So that's what we're going to be getting into a little bit later, but I wanted to give you an idea of the impact that this process can have on your business, right? We have, you know, been doing some work with some of our clients on overstock, recognizing and projecting out, you know, 8 to 12 months worth of overstock. Because if you're projecting out sales, right? One of the things that we do in SoStock, you can project out sales. And if you understand the Amazon fee policy, you know, we've baked into SoStock the ability to project into the future, you know, based on your sales projections and the Amazon fee structure, you can then forecast for these things, for understanding what are the patterns in terms of I'm going to be charged. And we can see that we have a huge spike here, right? And then we have another spike. This last spike is actually the fourth quarter. So those are those two big spikes. We don't want to know they're coming, you know, the month before, because we can't do much about that. We want to know they're coming 3 months before so that we can get our marketing team to focus on selling through that inventory to recover some of that cash before we get bid. So this is a scenario and gives an impact on if you just took, for this seller, if he took 4 products and decided to retire those products, he would be saving $53,000 across the next 8 months. He would be avoiding that amount of money just on those 4 ASINs. So it can be hugely impactful if you're planning for it.
Yeah. So, okay, the chat is just like blowing up a bunch of questions. So let's clarify. This age inventory fee, it's used to call long-term fees. They're called this. By the way, another thing, Shannon put in the chat a link to download the white paper. And the reason why we're doing this webinar is we also create a white paper at the beginning of the year with all of the fees, with all of the explanations. We also went over this on the first session of the webinar. So the more, like, you know, little details you're gonna find there. But I just want to clarify, since this is assessed on the 15, right? The inventory removal order needs to be placed on the 14 by 11:59 Pacific time. If you like request the removal order by then on the 15 the assessment won't happen. But there is something here, Chelsea, I want to ask. There's some people saying that if you do that, then you won't be able to send a shipment again for 90 days for that AC. Is that a penalty?
So I'm gonna cover that as well, kind of some strategies around making that decision.
Okay, perfect. So let's go. Another thing. Okay, as of this April 15, right? Amazon will automatically remove the inventory that you have in the warehouse for more than 365 days. So the things that have been there for a year that also haven't been sold in 6 months. So if they're completely stagnant for the last 6 months and they have more than a year in inventory, they will automatically remove it. So unless you go to the removal settings to get this like opt out, which I honestly think, as Chelsea was saying, retiring is the best thing that you could do. Like, so even if this is an automated process, let them remove that inventory because it's costing you a lot of money to have it there. So FYI, this is another thing that is coming up for that timeline that you have, April 15, the automated removal orders will be in place.
All right, so we keep on the train of talking about storage fees. So you've got the aged inventory fees, and as we kind of touched on, that huge spike with the storage fees during Q4. That's known as peak storage fees. And even though the prices decreased for January through September, the off-peak, they went from 87 cents per cubic foot to 78 cents. For the Q4, they did not change. So there's still $2.40 per cubic foot. So that's a huge difference. And you'll want to plan accordingly, right? I know that you have to send inventory in, you have to check it in for certain amount of time to be able to ensure that your product is available to sell for Black Friday, for Q4, for Christmas, all of that. But it is important to kind of step back and take a look at your entire catalog. The other way around peak storage is that AWD, as we mentioned, only charges 48 cents per cubic foot for the entire year. So they don't have that change from, from the rest of the year to Q4. It's the same price the entire year. And now, if you were around selling in November, which I believe most of you probably were, you might recognize these types of posts were going around, right? Got whacked with $26,000 in storage that we didn't see coming. Can't understand why this is happening. $25,000, $46,000 fee. Praying this is a mistake. The thing to understand is these fees are forecastable, right? As we say, if we can forecast our sales and we know fee policy, we can forecast for these. So that's what we should be doing. And that's something that I'm extremely passionate about, and something that we're working on doing now, is how do we get the data to be able to forecast for these things. So if you're forecasting for Q4, look at it across your entire catalog, and don't just look at what orders you had to place to send in. Look at those things that are sitting in your catalog that maybe you're not going to be selling, so that you can know the strategy to take is, if I'm not going to sell that in Q4, why should I be holding it and paying $2.40 per cubic foot in Q4? I want to know about that. We see the red arrow there. That's usually when people start noticing the problem that they're sitting on, is at the red arrow, or even beyond, when they wake up a month later in November and get charged for that. We want to be planning 3-4 months in advance and looking at our catalog and projecting out and paying attention on a monthly basis to those products that aren't going to be major Q4 products. And you'll see the strategy that comes about is sell down non-Q4 stock. Maybe you have a process of, or should create a process of tagging your inventory, right? We like to tag inventory, to batch inventory into different categories, right? This is my best sellers. This is my, swimsuits. This is my product that, my non-Q4 product. You tag all your products as non-Q4, then you can take a look at it and say, what is my plan to sell it as much as possible before I hit Q4? So I'm not paying a ton of fees unnecessarily for product that's not even going to sell that much. Just keep the bare minimum of what you're going to have. And especially if you plan on not reselling it, just retiring those products, retire it before Q4. That's something to be super aggressive about. If you know that you're just trying to sell through, don't keep it. I believe.
Sharing this, the H inventory policy, just for people that have questions. As Chelsea mentioned, these fee only start happening after 6 months of your inventory being there. So after 6 months, the 6 months on first day, and they start assessing at 50 cents, then it goes up. And that's what you see in your report. And as you see here, these are when the charges will happen. Between these dates is that they charge you, but they assess it on the 15th. So for you, there are some people that have questions about it. So just make sure. And if you want to know more, it's just go to the H inventory search chart policy in your Seller Central.
Yeah, cool.
Perfect.
Yeah, so the next idea is, so you found those ASINs, right, that you have problems with. Now you have to decide, what do we do with this? I don't want to keep these products, or I don't want to have as much stock. There are basically 4 options. The first is you can just keep paying those fees, right? We look at, in the next 3 months, because usually, it takes at least 3 months to get something moving, unless you're very, very aggressive, right? Drop your price 50%, or whatever that is. It usually will take 3 months, and whatever you do, you'll have either, between 1 and 3 months for it to actually catch hold, right? To actually take effect. So we look at, okay, we're going to pay $9,800 within the next 3 months on these products. And that's based on projections, on the age, and on the fee policy. The other option is to remove the product. And we put the asterisk there to one of the commenters' points. Amazon will basically create a freeze, a removal or liquidation freeze. You will not be able to send in inventory for the next 3 months, for the next 90 days. So if you're going to keep this product in stock, you want to plan to have at least 4 months of stock. So if you're selling through or removing some of that inventory, you don't want to remove all of it if you plan on selling. So make sure that you know that. And then the other side of that is to know how much of your stock is aging, because stock ages at different times. I may have 1,000 units and only 200 are aging, and the other 800 are at 80 days worth of, 80 days in age. We don't want to remove that whole 1,000 because it's not going to make sense. It's not all incurring aged inventory fees. I'm going to remove that 200 and stop the bleeding on those particular units. So important to keep in mind. And then with the liquidation that we have back in the other slide, the important things to understand there, the same thing with liquidation, only remove what is incurring fees. But we'll get into what liquidation actually is. How does that work? But Amazon has a liquidation program. It's not the same as doing liquidation for, outside of Amazon. They have a liquidation program, and you could get some money back.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I just closed the presentation.
No problem. So I'll just keep talking. So you could get, you often will get some money back. It's probably not going to be break even for you, but it'll stop the bleeding. Like we said, the 15th of the month, you do it before the 15th of the month and it will stop that bleeding. It's not guaranteed that Amazon's going to find a liquidator for you. So there is a little bit of a risk there. It may not be an option. And it's possibly because your category does not have a buyer. Amazon has no relationship with someone that, who might want to buy, let's say, automotive parts, just to make something up. So there's no guarantee that they'll find a buyer, and you may lose money. So it's important to understand how the liquidation policies work. The last point I'll say about that, until we get into a little bit more detail, is to consider it's not just the money that you are making in recovery from liquidation, which is generally a range. You make that money, but you also save on those 3 months of fees, right? Those fees. So instead of making, $580, which is on the low end, we add to that the $9,800 that you saved, and we look at net savings. So it's over $10,000 on the low side in net savings because we avoided those fees. And then last one is, this is the best option generally, is to market, right? To market that product as quickly as possible. You want to try to market it within the first 3 months. So you might have to pay that $9,000, but if you can make some of that money back, in this example, it's about $30,000 that we made back in dropping the price, say 30%. We moved that inventory in the next 3 months. We still paid that $9,000 fee, but we ended up putting $20,000 in our pocket on the way to getting rid of that product. So keep that in mind. Marketing is probably the best bet, but if you're facing really heavy fees, make sure that you take a look at all of your options. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about the liquidation program. People tend to forget about this program, and there are some reasons to maybe not go in that direction, some reasons to maybe remove your items instead of liquidation. Removal is extremely expensive. The times when we've seen people choosing removals are generally you have somewhere else to sell the product. And your ability to sell the product on another channel and to stop the bleeding of the inventory fees is more than the removal is going to cost you. So we see, you know, some clients removing inventory and going and selling them on other channels. The other reason people remove and is that they don't want their brand products out there. They don't want their name out there in liquidation piles, or, you know, Amazon, you know, or maybe they don't have anything, they don't have something to do with it, right? They have nowhere to, you know, to move it. So those are various different reasons to remove. As far as liquidation, this can be a good option for sellers and should be something that is not overlooked. Given that, it's important, I would think, to understand how does this program actually work. So let's say you've got a product and your product is priced at $40. That's what you sell it for. And you've got 1,000 units of this product that you want to liquidate. Amazon is going to send that product to a buyer. And the money that it'll get back usually is around between 5 and 10% of your retail price is what they're going to get back. They call it the gross recovery value. So your gross recovery value on a $40 product would be between $2 and $4. Then, because Amazon is Amazon, they're going to charge you a 15% referral fee. So now that $2 goes to $1.70, and $4 would go to $3.40. And then on top of that, they're going to take a discounted removal fee. So it's 4 times less than normal removal fees. If you go to liquidation, it's significantly less. The discounted removal fee factored into this particular example would mean that your actual, they call it net recovery value, the money that goes in your pocket is going to be between $135 and $305. You multiply that by 1,000 units that you liquidated, and you're looking at between $1,350 and $3,050 as your net recovery, which you'll see in the next 90 days.
Yeah. Important to mention, somebody said like, oh, the slides are outdated, the fees are actually higher. When you go to the policy, you see the fees of the removals. Those are regular removals. That's if you go to the removal path of taking the inventory out. But what is here in the slide is this discounted removal fee for the liquidation, because they're charging you the liquidation fee, or, you know, whatever they're going to charge you on discounted, right? They're going to charge you the referral fee because you technically sold it through the platform. And then to fulfill it, meaning to take it out of the warehouse to send it to the liquidator, they're going to charge you for a removal fee that is discounted. So that's why it's so cheap compared to what you see right now in the regular removal order policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I believe that the removals for that example, 25-cent example for removals, normal removals starts at $1.04. So it's like 4 times what it is when you liquidate it.
Yeah, $1.04. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now that we know where to get the information and why it's important and how to calculate it, the strategy to implement for each month, and really immediately right now, but then each month thereafter, starting on the 16th, take a look at what inventory you have sitting there, right? Identify the ASINs that are in trouble, like we talked about, and then decide how you're going to market those. You can do a flash sale, you can increase ads, drop your price. And then once you've done that and put that in motion, the next step that you're going to take is going to be to set up some weekly tracking, right? And so that weekly tracking, which you'll see on the next slide, is going to show you what the progress is of that marketing. So you want to look at your 2-day velocity, your 7-day, and your 15-day. And when you're looking at this, you can see the velocity. You should see the velocity is increasing. So whatever your 15-day velocity is going to be less than your 2-day velocity, will show you that you've got an increase in sales based on those changes. You're also going to want to look at your units, the units that you're trying to sell through, and see that those are decreasing at a good rate. That's on a weekly basis. The next the next phase is you do that on a weekly basis. You keep checking, you keep seeing, you could drop the price again to get it really moving. And then the drop dead date is, like we talked about, the 14th, the day before we get charged. We have to make a decision. Am I going to keep marketing this, or has it been a month of me trying to market this? It's not moving. I'm about to get hit with $4,000 in fees. To liquidate, it's going to save me that $4,000, and I'm going to put another $1,000 in my pocket for a net of $5,000. Let's do that. Let's place that order right now before that fee hits. Lock out the fees, like we said, either liquidate or remove, and then start all over again, right? So that's the strategy, the next strategy to adopt. And I think, starting that right away would be important.
Okay, so we hit the mark on the forecasting plays. We play for age inventory and peak storage fees. Those are the plays that we know work, that have real results. And a lot of the things that you saw, a lot of the math behind those things are what it's built into SoStock and the amazing tool that we have for forecasting and inventory management on Amazon. Right now, we're going to talk about the low inventory fee level and the rules and the strategies to play that game. But remember, this is something that will start happening next Monday, I think in 3 days, 4 days, I don't know. We still don't know a lot of the things that we're seeing. From everything that I've read, all of the policies, all of the, newsletters and blogs and posts and essays, I think we have a good understanding on how this will roll out. So this is probably the most critical part of the whole webinar, because at the end, you're going to have the tool to manage the low inventory fee. So you're going to stay here and you're going to get that, spreadsheet, so you can start tracking those things and actually see what you can do with SoStock and, all of the assessments that you can do in your inventory. I'll let you take it from here, Chelsea.
Yeah, so in terms of the low inventory level fee, this is probably, I wouldn't say the most controversial. It started out that way. I think that inbound shipping has become highly controversial, but the least understood fee, and the one that's kind of people are most nervous about, is the low inventory level fee. So the first thing to understand, and I think this has become something that people are familiar with, is that it's a fulfillment fee, not a storage fee. So you're only going to be charged when you fall into a certain range and your product ships out. So if you don't sell anything during that period of time, then you don't pay that fee. The fees start to take effect when you have less than 28 days of supply, according to Amazon's history. They look at your historical value, your historical sales for the last 90 days, right? Your historical days of supply for the past 90 days and for the past 30 days. And whichever is higher is what they go with. So if both of those historical calculations are below 28 days, then you are going to be incurring fees. I'm not going to get too much into the details on what those fees are, because we've talked about that. We have the white paper. We talked about it in the replay, which you can watch for the last webinar that we did. But that's important to understand. This is only for standard size products. So small standard, large standard. And then it's measured on a parent ASIN. So if you've got a bunch of products and some of them sell really quickly, some of them aren't selling very well, that's going to balance itself out, so that you're charged you're assessed for all of the items within that parent category. It is a double-edged sword, because some of those products can help you to stay out of the range of having low days of supply, but once you fall into that range, then all of those child ASINs are going to be charged that fee, even if there's only one that was the culprit. The other item to know is that it's reassessed each Monday. So if you fall into below that threshold on Monday, and your inventory checks in and you move out, so say you're at 26 days and then inventory checks in that following Tuesday and you move into, 30 days of supply. That's great. You're out of that range, but you're still going to pay that fee until the following Monday when Amazon reassesses. So just know that that's kind of how it works. And, if you're, why am I being paid, charged fees? It's because every Monday is when it counts.
But also that's a good thing because you are not stuck with the fee for too long.
Yeah.
I mean, and a week is just enough to get a check-in.
Yeah, and also if you're running out of stock, for example, and you know that you're not quite at that range of, say you're at 29 days, maybe you do a flash sale and blitz through or something and sell out before those fees incur. So there are different strategies that people, can adopt. They could also try to slow down the sales, because slowing down the sales means they're not, having, very many fees, and that days of supply is going up because the sales are going down. So there are different strategies to employ. As long as you keep a healthy days of supply, let's say above 35 as your buffer stock, and that's your low point, as long as you keep that range, you should be okay. I don't think that there are going to be as many people affected by this as you think, right? As long as you keep a healthy level. We're going to actually go through a couple of examples, some case studies. Did we want to go through that other one with the size tiers and the fees?
Which one? Oh, sorry, here.
Yeah. So these are the fees. Just real quick, you've got three size tiers. Dimensional weight does apply in this, like we talked about before. So make sure that you know what your dimensional weight is. But there's only 3 tiers, so it shouldn't affect it that badly. And then you have 3 fee tiers. So this is where we talked about days of supply below 28 days, and then they get more and more expensive the lower and lower your days of supply go, right? And that's because Amazon has to pay more money. If you have 14 days of supply, your inventory is not spread across the country very well, and so your inventory is further away from the customer. They have to then express ship your inventory to get it to the customer in 2 days, and that's costing them money. So now they've lowered the fulfillment fee for everyone, and they're charging the low inventory fee for those who are costing them more money. So it's kind of offsetting, right? You pay a low inventory fee because you aren't doing a good job of keeping your inventory in stock, and those that are keeping inventory in stock, they get rewarded with the lower fulfillment fee.
Yeah, just adding something. We have a bunch of questions in the chat that are regarding, is the low inventory for per unit level? Will it include reserve, inbound? Like all of these questions, guys, we answered in the first webinar. So we spent a decent 20-25 minutes just talking about low inventory fees. So make sure to go there, because we're trying to give you here the tools to offset those and plan for those, and give you also the examples. So if you want the theory, download the paper or go to the replay for the first webinar, and you will have all of the information there, promise.
Yeah, and it is per unit fees. But yeah, there's a lot more details and understanding the policy and how it works and all the nuances that are definitely worth checking out in the link that Shannon just dropped. All right, so then we're going to talk about these case studies. So, and part of this was taken from, we're looking at this in the tool that we're going to be sharing with you. Seasonality. So a lot of people who have seasonal businesses have been nervous about this fee. And rightly so. This is a breakdown of, you've got a seasonal business. It looks like it's about 2 months of the year. The heat of August, dropping off toward the end of September. And if we look at starting before that peak season and ending right at that peak season, we're not going to be, it gets close to being a problematic for us, that yellow one right there. It's close to being problematic, but we're still okay. So you look at the 30 days of supply, we are running too lean, right? The past 30 days, when I look at how much product I shipped out versus how much inventory on average I had in stock, Amazon said I had 17.7 days of supply. So my 30-day supply would get me into trouble. But the 90-day supply, because I'm probably stocked up pretty heavily leading into my season. So I'm stocked up fairly heavily. So during that 90-day period of time, I've got almost 40 days of supply. So that keeps me in a good range. That 90 days carries me through without incurring those crazy fees. So it's good to say that for the majority of the season, I'm not being charged those fees, which is important to note, because if I fall into that category in the middle of my season when I'm selling thousands upon thousands of units, that's going to get very, very expensive. So it's nice to see that that's not going to be a problem so much. We look at then toward the beginning of our season, and then after our season has ended, moving into about a month after, right? We're looking at July 15th to October 12th. We're fine still. In this scenario, our 90-day supply is over 33 days, and our 30-day supply is just over at 28 days. So we're still good, right, in this scenario. Where we start having problems is when we're looking at coming out of our season, but still not getting over the peak of our season. And now you see we fell into the range of 90 days is at 22 days of supply, and 30 days is at 26 days of supply. So the 30 days almost gets us over, and we'll probably move, a week or two and be out of danger. But at that time, you're in danger and you're incurring those fees. Luckily, as a seasonal business, you're not selling that much at this point. So the impact of those fees is significantly less than in your peak season. So if you have a seasonal business, hopefully this is a little bit helpful and hopeful to you to note that if you do incur these fees, it's probably going to be on your off season.
Which means that you're not selling a lot. Therefore, if you don't sell, you don't get charged.
Yeah, exactly.
Important to understand that.
The less you sell, the less you are charged. Now let's talk about, I know Prime Day is, we say it's coming up probably 3 months, but it feels like, you're always preparing for Prime Day. So this would be an example of Prime Day, or of someone who does, some flash sales. With the calculations that we ran in terms of a flash sale, looking at 90 days and 30-day impact on that, the impact actually wasn't that bad. An individual flash sale wasn't too harmful. And we ran a couple of different scenarios. Now, there's an infinite amount of scenarios that could be run. So this is not a hard, fast rule, but it's just examples to show you some of the things that we ran and how we found that it wasn't as detrimental as we think that it might be. So both of these examples, we stayed out of the danger zone. All right, let's talk a little bit about this tool that we've been hinting at. So this is a tool that I put together based on the fees, right? Based on the fee structure and how it's calculated. And you can use this. There are a couple of data points that you need. You'll need to know what your daily projected sales are. You can also use this to build out scenarios. So if you've got a seasonal business and your season is coming up, let's say, in 4 months, and you want to know based on, past history, or based on what you believe you're going to be selling, you can plug in 90 days worth of daily sales. And then at the top, where that yellow one is in the top of the column, you'll plug in your starting balance, and it's going to calculate your daily balance for every day, right? So it's looking at your daily sales, and it's looking at your daily average for the 90 days and for the 30 days. And so you have that, and the only last piece is, do you have any transfers into FBA that are planned? So your transfers also should be factored into there. And once you've got that data, it's going to calculate for you. It's going to calculate your 90 days of historical supply, your 30 days of historical supply, and then you're going to see what your projected low inventory days of supply is. And we see in this example, it's not in a dangerous range. One of the cool things about this, if you are a SoStock user, is you can actually export the projected history for your product, and then just grab 90 days and plug it right in there, and that's going to give you, the estimate of how many days of supply you will have for that particular product. The export at the top of any particular ASIN in our forecast. Okay, yes. So now Amazon also has a tool. So if you want to take a look at this, this is current. It's not projecting into the future, it's projecting current. And they'll give you your days of supply, right? So if you go into the inventory section to FBA Inventory, there is a dashboard there, and you're going to look for the column historical days of supply, and it will show you how many days of supply you have. So we see that this product particularly is in the fee range, it's being charged fees for every product that ships out. And then if you hover over the detail section, it's going to give you a pop-up that shows you how they came up with that math. So you can see, the exact math for calculating short term and the exact math for calculating the long term. And this will give you an idea of which of those ranges are you having trouble with, right?
Perfect. So we got it. This is, if you scan the QR code, you will go to the folder that we created for you. It's a Google folder where you have access to the sheet live. So I was pulling it up. It looks like here. So when you go, you will see all of the things. Let me pull back the QR code again so you can have it. So scan it there, and that's what you're gonna use to calculate those things. Important. Since we cannot predict the future, what we try to use is the inventory levels prior. So looking back to, let's say, your past months, and obviously how you think your demand behaves. So sometimes it's, if you have a seasonal product and your low season is during the summer, then you can you will see that there's doesn't make any sense to get the same levels of inventory that you had in the past. But with the calculator, that you can project all of the things that you need. Or the other thing, and this is on the forecasting strategies for the low inventory fee, we saw the forecasting strategies for the H inventory and peak storage. But for the low inventory, use the calculator, plan for a higher buffer. So this is where, we need to live in the good range. We know already that Amazon will charge you a lot of money when you hit more than 6 months in the inventory in FBA. But a good range is to have 75 to 90 days of inventory. So if you're in that range already, you're good. And if you're not, and if you're living let's say 45 or 30 days at a time, make sure to have a higher buffer, because you don't really know this, when something can happen to business or the demand that spikes, and then it takes a lot of time to send inventory, and track 2 weeks out. So make sure that you're planning ahead. You're planning for the next 2 Mondays to, make sure that you have it, because it doesn't count for the inbound inventory that is coming. It needs to be received at the warehouse. So basically available. And the other part is to let SoStock do the work. So with SoStock, and somebody in the chat was asking, hey, Chelsea, where can I have a dashboard that I can see the projections and see where it's better to remove, or do the marketing, or do the liquidation, or see those inventory things? Well, the answer is SoStock. And that's why, Chelsea has put out this amazing, Excel for you, and the tools, the Resizer, it's from SoStock too. These two things, or the things that we have given you here, are completely for free. But if you're looking to dig deeper into the things that you can improve in your business to improve your bottom line, make sure to stick around. I will share a QR code so you can get access to all of the things. And the most important one will be an inventory audit. So telling you what are your liabilities, the things that they will charge you in the future, and the things that you're gonna get charged if you don't stock inventory, things like that. So with that, guys, we come to the end of the FBA plays. So this is a cheat sheet of all of the things that we talked about. Every single play, every single fee, and what we think you should do for this. So you can take a screenshot, take this, put in your office, and make sure to live and breathe these rules, because this is the game that we're playing. And sometimes people over focus on things that increase the beats, increase the PPC, let's do more marketing, but they don't pay attention to the inventory side of things, and that will hit hard this year, since they're penalizing us for having low inventory. And so for you and everybody that's in the webinar, you're gonna have an exclusive promotion, and that comes with the inventory audit. So SoftStock will do an inventory audit for you guys, where we're gonna assess all of the things in FBA that are in FBA. So Chelsea, you can talk a little bit more about what the FBA reduction, the stockouts, and the overstock risk.
Yeah, so we have a profit audit where we'll look at your entire account, and the things that we've talked about, the FBA fee reduction, where we showed the box and the box size and those case studies, we'll run one of those for you for your entire catalog. And then, so that's the FBA fees. It's going to have an impact on your bottom line as far as your fulfillment fees. Stock out losses, we didn't touch much on that because that isn't less so has to do with inventory in terms of the fees, more so to do with lost revenue. So we're going to look at places where you had lost revenue, but it will also look at potential danger points for low inventory fees. So if you have stock out problems, then you probably have low inventory level problems. If you have low buffer stock, you probably have low inventory level problems. So that will point out those things to you as well. And then overstock risks, any aged inventory, any monthly storage fees that are increasing, it'll factor in the Q4 rate. So we'll look at the entire business, your entire catalog, and get an idea of what opportunities there might be if you are to create better systems. So, setting up your buffer stock correctly, setting up your lead times, your forecasting, and also just having those eyes. We have a dashboard that's the aged inventory dashboard, where you can find and isolate not just those products that are currently incurring fees, like we talked about, but the products that will incur fees in the future based on your forecast. Whatever your forecast, we have a timeline, so we can look at the projected forecast and we can do the math moving forward to be able to see that. And if you're not looking forward, if you're only looking at today, then you're not seeing the things that you could hit, like the 9-month fees. So it'll address all of those. You'll be able to talk to someone about it. So when you go through this process, you'll be connected to someone who can help to run your custom audit. And I think the thing that we want to say about that is that I believe that the process is going to start April 2nd. But if you want to get to the front of the line, you can put something in the chat and mention that you want to get this process started right away, and we'll put you at the front of the line, at the top of the list. Just comment, and then we'll be able to follow up with you.
Perfect. We did it, like just right before ending our time. Perfect. A lot of people sign up. We love it. You guys are not gonna regret this information. And I don't know, Chelsea, if you wanna pull one up, because I saw one example the other day and I was just like completely blown up by the amount of information that you guys get from the audit. There are a few questions that we didn't answer. I guess we can go back to them. Let's just
Yeah.
see the results of the audit. I know there is one question where somebody asked, if we do seller fulfill Prime, will the returns come back to our warehouse or will they go back to Amazon's warehouse? So they will go back to your warehouse because you are doing all of the fulfillment. You are in charge of the fulfillment. Not only that, and this is where seller fulfill Prime is a really intensive program that will require you to provide also the customer service. So that's a huge thing. You not only need to ship and be super sharp with shipping time frames and stuff, you will also need to do the customer service.
All right, so I put up the financial impact report, the profit audit. And so what this is going to do, it's going to look at your entire catalog and assess if you had any stock out losses in the past year, right? How much did it cost you to be out of stock, and how many ASINs were out of stock out of your entire catalog? And it will highlight these in the red areas. These are some areas to look out for. Yellow areas is just something to keep an eye on, and then green areas you're doing well. So this entire section is around low stock, right? Do you have low buffer stock? If you have a bunch of products that's low buffer stock, that's something that you want to get a handle on, because that probably means that you're going to be incurring low inventory fees. And then we also look at the overstock. So how many ASINs are you currently carrying more than 90 days of stock? What's your how many products are currently incurring aged inventory fees, meaning they're over 6 months? So in this scenario, 55% of your catalog is over 6 months old. That's going to be a problem. So those are things that we want to take a look at. And then lastly, is there any liability where you've got excess inventory, you've got inventory that you're not going to sell through for, within the next, let's say, 6 months, you're incurring aged inventory fees. This will look at 8 to 12 months in advance and show you a picture of, based on your current forecast, what are you going to pay in overstock fees, aged inventory fees, if you don't change anything. And then when you go into, if you take a look, let's say, you plug in your data to SoStock, you'll be able to see when you change your forecast, how that impacts your fees. So you can plan accordingly. And then the last piece is FBA fee reduction. So just like the tool that Vanessa shared, the FBA fee reduction, so that tool was a single-use tool. We'll be able to run your entire catalog and show you any opportunities that you have to reduce into a lower fee tier. And then it'll show what you have to do to reduce your product, how much it's going to save you per unit. And then we look at your sales for the last year so that you can see the financial impact that it would have for a year's worth of sales, so that you're focused not just on changing the product, but changing the products that will have the biggest impact, right? $66,000 a year in savings is much more enticing than $1,000 a year, right? So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the profit audit, and how it ties into, really getting an understanding of the health of your business and what to prioritize, right? Do you have problems with stockouts? Do you have problems with overstock? Where should you first put your time? And then where should you next put your time?
Somebody asked if this is also applicable, the audit for products that are oversized. I think it's for everything, right?
For oversized, we can't run the FBA fee reduction, but I believe we're running everything else, because we can't run the fee reduction for oversized, but we can run it for everything else.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're working on that for the fee reduction.
There is one more thing on the historical days of supply for the low inventory fee. It's calculated by a parent ASIN. That's what Amazon says. Yeah. But is the low inventory fee applied based on inventory of each child? Alex asked this question, and I don't really understand if what he means is the average or everything.
Yeah, so you have your inventory, let's say 3 products. You have inventory levels for 3 products. It's going to look at all of the inventory, just add them all together. And then it's going to look at, and then it's going to take an average of that, right? So for 90 days, what's your average inventory that sits at Amazon for all 3 of those products combined? Then how many units did you sell that Amazon shipped out? And factor that in, and that's where you get your days of supply as one number for the entire 3 products. And that's for the 90 days, and it's done for the 30 days, and then you know, and it's the higher of the 2 numbers that will represent your actual days of supply.
Perfect. I think those are all of the questions. I don't know if I missed anything, but guys, thank you so much for spending this hour and a half with us to talk about probably the most unsexy thing that's happening right now on Amazon. We appreciate your time. Please feel free to ask any questions. Send us a message. You can, you know, at least to me, you can contact me on LinkedIn, Instagram, my email, vanessa@carbon6.io, and Chelsea, the same, chelsea@carbon6.io.
Yep.
Shoot us an email if there's any questions. For the ones of you, I'm just going to pull again the QR code. So in case you didn't scan the presentation with to do the audit, just one more time. And yeah, like, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.